The ridge erupted in flame at 0600 hours. Mortar fire split the dawn sky over the Kazan Valley, a stretch of wasteland 20 miles south of the demarcation line. What remained of the industrial district, concrete shells, twisted rebar, shattered grain silos served as cover for both sides. Smoke rose in thick columns from burning fuel depots. The air tasted of cordite and dust. Lieutenant Colonel Warren Hayes commanded the eastern advance. 300 men, 12 armored vehicles. Air support delayed due to weather. The objective was simple: secure the processing plant before enemy reinforcements arrived from the northern corridor. They had been pushing forward for 90 minutes when the first casualty occurred. Sergeant Marcus Tiller dropped without warning. Clean shot through the left temple. He had been relaying coordinates to the communications unit when his voice cut mid-sentence. The radio operator beside him dove for cover, scanning the rubble field ahead. No muzzle flash. No sound beyond the constant percussion of the firefight. Hayes crouched behind a blast barrier, studying the trajectory. The angle suggested elevation, height advantage, somewhere in the half-collapsed factory complex, 400 meters northwest. Sniper, he said, into his headset. Single shooter, probably embedded in the factory ruins. The words had barely left his mouth when another man went down. Corporal Devin Richter, positioned 30 meters to the right, throat shot, instant. Hayes felt his pulse spike. 2 kills in less than 40 seconds, different positions, different angles, either multiple shooters or someone moving with impossible speed. All units, take cover. Ground teams advance with smoke. Air recon, get me thermal on that factory complex now. The battlefield shifted. What had been a straightforward assault became a deadly puzzle. Hayes had spent 18 years in combat zones. He knew the difference between lucky shots and precision execution. This was the latter. Staff Sergeant Olivia Crane adjusted her scope. The factory floor beneath her was a maze of collapsed machinery and broken ventilation shafts. She had entered the building 3 hours before dawn, moving through gaps in the perimeter that existed only because she had studied satellite footage for 6 days straight. She was not supposed to be here. Her unit had been reassigned 48 hours ago. New orders, different sector. But intelligence had flagged Hayes' advance, and someone needed to slow it down. Buy time for the defensive line to reinforce. So she stayed. No backup, no extraction plan, just her rifle, 400 rounds, and a working knowledge of structural weak points. She fired again. A third target, this time a radio operator near the armored personnel carrier. The shot punched through the radio itself before finding flesh. The equipment exploded in sparks. Hayes would assume multiple shooters now. Good. Let them spread their attention. Olivia shifted position, crawling through a gap in the floor that led to a lower level. The building was a vertical labyrinth. She had mapped 12 different firing positions during her reconnaissance. Each one offered a unique angle and a guaranteed exit route. She checked her watch. The main assault would reach the plant in 20 minutes. After that, holding this position became suicide. But she did not plan to be here in 20 minutes. Hayes received the thermal scan results. Sir, we've got a heat signature. Northeast corner, 3rd floor. Single target. He zoomed in on the tactical display. There, a small, human-shaped bloom against the cooler concrete, alone. Confirmed one shooter? He asked. Affirmative, sir. No other signatures in the immediate area. Hayes allowed himself a thin smile. One sniper holding up 300 men. Bold, reckless, effective. Deploy Patrol Team 7. Approach from the eastern flank. Teams 8 and 9, bracket from the south. I want that building surrounded before she can relocate. The orders went out. 3 units, each with 8 soldiers, began their approach. They moved in coordinated intervals, using rubble and smoke as concealment. Hayes watched the thermal feed. The signature had not moved. Too confident, he thought, or too inexperienced to know when to run. Patrol Team 7 reached the factory perimeter first. Corporal Nina Valdez led the unit, her rifle sweeping left and right as they advanced through the skeletal remains of a loading dock. The building loomed above them. 3 stories of crumbling infrastructure held together by rusted support beams. Thermal shows 3rd floor, northeast, she whispered into her mic. No movement in the past 2 minutes. Copy that, Hayes replied. Proceed with caution. Assume hostile is aware of your position. Valdez signaled her team forward. They entered through a gap in the wall, stepping over fallen concrete and shattered glass. The interior was dark, lit only by scattered beams of sunlight cutting through holes in the roof. They reached a stairwell. Half the steps were missing. Valdez tested the first riser with her boot. It held. Moving up, she reported. The climb took 4 minutes. Every step a gamble. The structure groaned under their weight, metal scraping against metal. They emerged onto the 2nd floor. More rubble, more shadows. The stairwell to the 3rd level was completely destroyed, replaced by a jagged hole in the ceiling. We need ropes, Valdez said. Before anyone could respond, the explosion hit. Not close distant, maybe half a mile east. but loud enough to rattle the building. Dust fell from the ceiling. Someone cursed. Valdez's radio crackled. Team 7, report. We're intact. What was that? Fuel depot. Secondary detonation. Stay focused. She looked up at the hole in the ceiling. The thermal signature was directly above them now. 20 feet. Maybe less. Target is stationary, she said, requesting permission to engage. Denied. I want her alive if possible. Proceed. Valdez pulled a climbing rope from her pack. Olivia heard them coming. Boots on metal. Whispered commands. The faint click of a safety being released. She was no longer on the 3rd floor. The thermal signature they were tracking was a decoy, a heat pack wrapped in fabric, positioned near a window to mimic human body temperature. She had placed it there 90 seconds ago, before descending through a ventilation shaft to the ground level. Now she waited in the loading dock they had already cleared, tucked inside a supply crate with a clear sight line to the eastern approach. Patrol Team 8 appeared first, 6 soldiers, moving in a staggered line. They passed within 10 meters of her position, eyes forward, scanning the upper floors. She let them pass. Patience was the difference between survival and capture. Team 9 followed 3 minutes later. Same formation, same mistake. They assumed she was cornered above while they controlled the ground. When the last soldier cleared her line of sight, Olivia slipped from the crate and moved deeper into the building's lower level. She had already identified the exit point, a drainage tunnel that led beneath the perimeter fence. But she was not ready to leave yet. Hayes stared at the tactical display. 3 teams converging. No shots fired. The thermal signature remained in place. Something's wrong, he muttered. Sir? His communications officer asked. She hasn't moved. No repositioning. No defensive fire. Either she's injured or... The realization hit like ice water. Pull them back. Now. It's a trap. Pull them back. The order went out, but Patrol Team 7 had already reached the 3rd floor. Valdez peered through the hole in the ceiling. She could see the heat source now, a small bundle near the window. Not moving. Not human-shaped. Contact. Decoy. Repeat. Target is A. The shot came from below. Not at her at Team 8, still on the ground floor. The bullet punched through Sergeant Kenneth Rowe's shoulder, spinning him into the dirt. The second shot took out their communications specialist. Valdez's team scrambled for cover, but the 3rd floor offered none. They were exposed, pinned, and the shooter was somewhere beneath them. She's below us, Valdez shouted. Ground level, western sector. By the time they descended, Olivia was already gone. Hayes deployed all 12 patrol teams. The factory became the center of a tightening grid. Each team covered a quadrant, closing in from multiple directions. UAVs circled overhead, feeding real-time imagery to the command post. She's still in there, Hayes said, studying the aerial feed. No way out without us seeing her. His second-in-command, Captain Melissa Trent, was less certain. She just fooled 3 teams with a heat pack. What makes you think she's still playing by our rules? Because she's out of options. We have thermal, we have aerial, we have bodies on the ground. There's nowhere left to hide. Trent did not respond. She had learned to trust her instincts, and right now they were screaming that this sniper was not operating like someone cornered. Hayes keyed his radio. All teams, maintain perimeter integrity. No one moves alone. Eyes on all exits. If she shows herself, I want her neutralized immediately. The teams acknowledged one by one. Patrol Team 1, northeast clear. Patrol Team 2, south perimeter locked. Patrol Team 3, western approach secured. It continued until all 12 had reported in. The factory was surrounded. Every potential exit covered. Every sight line monitored. Hayes allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. She's got 15 minutes before we go in with gas and flashbangs. Let's see her vanish from that. Olivia crouched in the drainage tunnel. The passage was barely wide enough for her shoulders. Water dripped from overhead pipes. The air smelled of rust and decay. She had entered the tunnel 20 minutes ago, dragging her rifle behind her. The entrance was hidden beneath a collapsed section of floor, invisible from above. The exit was 300 meters east, far beyond the current perimeter, but she was not using it. Instead, she had stopped halfway through and reversed direction. Now she was directly beneath the factory's central foundation, surrounded by bedrock and concrete. No thermal signature, no line of sight, no movement to track. For all intents and purposes, she had ceased to exist. She checked her ammunition. 300 rounds remaining. Enough. Her plan required precision, not volume. Above her, boots hammered against concrete. Orders were shouted. Teams repositioned. They were preparing for a full breach, which meant gas grenades and overwhelming force. Olivia pulled a small radio from her pack, not military issue, but a civilian shortwave she had modified for this operation. She tuned it to the frequency Hayes' teams were using. Confirm gas deployment in 10 minutes. Team 6 moving to Breach Point Alpha. Still no visual on target. She smiled in the darkness. They were looking everywhere except beneath their feet. Patrol Team 5 entered the factory at 0720 hours. They moved in a standard breach formation, 2 pointmen, 3 covering fire, 1 demolition specialist. Gas grenades preceded them, filling the ground floor with thick white smoke. Target obscured, the team leader reported. Proceeding to clear rooms, they swept the first level methodically. Every corner checked, every shadow investigated. Nothing. First floor clear, moving to second. The stairwell had been reinforced with temporary supports. They ascended carefully, gas masks filtering the toxic air. Second floor, more of the same. Rubble, broken machinery, no sign of the sniper. She's not here, someone muttered. Keep searching. They reached the third floor, the location of the original heat signature. The decoy heat pack still sat near the window, cold now, its chemical reaction exhausted. Team 5's leader keyed his radio. Sir, we've cleared all 3 floors. No hostile contact, no blood trail, no spent casings. Hayes' voice crackled back. That's impossible. We had eyes on this building for 30 minutes. She didn't leave. Well, she's not here now. A pause. Then, check again. She's hiding somewhere. They checked again. And again. By the third sweep, even the team leader was beginning to doubt reality. Sir, I'm telling you there's no one here. It's like she evaporated. Hayes stared at his tactical display. The UAV feed showed Patrol Team 5 moving through empty rooms. Thermal imaging revealed nothing. Motion sensors registered only his own men. The sniper had simply vanished. Olivia listened to the confusion through her radio. They would search for another hour, probably. Tear apart the factory piece by piece. But they would find nothing because they were operating on a false assumption, that she had been trying to escape. She had not. While Team 5 searched above, Olivia used the tunnel to reposition beneath the eastern perimeter. She emerged in a collapsed basement 2 buildings away, a structure Hayes' forces had already cleared and dismissed as irrelevant. She set up her rifle in a ground floor window, partially obscured by hanging debris. From this angle, she had a direct line of sight to Hayes' command post. She waited. At 0735, Hayes stepped outside his armored vehicle to confer with Captain Trent. They stood in the open for exactly 12 seconds. Olivia did not take the shot. Killing a commanding officer would bring immediate retaliation, airstrikes, artillery, overwhelming force. Instead, she aimed at the communications array mounted on the vehicle's roof. One shot. The antenna exploded in a shower of sparks. Hayes dove for cover, shouting orders. Soldiers scattered. Chaos erupted. Olivia was already moving, sliding back into the tunnel before anyone could pinpoint her location. Behind her, Hayes' voice echoed across the battlefield. Find her. I don't care how fine that shooter. But Olivia was already gone again. Vanished. Patrol Team 9 reached the basement at 0742. They found the firing position immediately disturbed dust, a single spent casing, faint boot prints leading to a hole in the floor. Got her trail, the team leader reported. She's using the tunnels. Hayes' response was immediate. Pursue. I want teams in those tunnels now. Patrol Teams 9, 10, and 11 descended into the drainage system. Their helmet lights cut through the darkness, illuminating rusted pipes and standing water. The tunnel branched in multiple directions. Split up, ordered Lieutenant Graham Hale, commanding Team 10. Cover all exits. It was the correct tactical decision and a fatal mistake. Corporal Jessica Marin led a 3-person unit down the southern branch. The tunnel narrowed as they advanced, forcing them into single file. Water sloshed around their ankles. The air was cold and damp. Movement ahead, Marin whispered. They raised their rifles. A shadow flickered at the edge of their lights, human-shaped, then gone. Contact. Target fleeing south. They ran, splashing through the water. The tunnel twisted sharply to the left, then opened into a junction chamber. Empty. Where did she? The lights went out. Not their helmet lights, the emergency lighting in the tunnel itself. Someone had cut the power. Marin activated her night vision. Green-tinted darkness resolved into shapes. Pipes. Walls. Her 2 teammates behind her. No sniper. Regroup, she said. Back to the junction. They turned. The first soldier collapsed without a sound. Marin spun, raising her rifle, but saw nothing. No muzzle flash. No movement. The second soldier shouted a warning before his voice cut off abruptly. Marin fired blindly into the darkness. Her shots echoed like thunder in the confined space. Silence answered. She backed away, heart hammering. Her radio was dead, jammed, or broken. She was alone in the dark, with a ghost. Above ground, Hayes lost contact with Patrol Team 10. Team 10, report. Marin, do you copy? Static. Team 9, can you reach Team 10's position? Negative, sir. We're in the northern branch. Would take 20 minutes to backtrack. Hayes felt a cold knot form in his stomach. 3 soldiers, gone silent. No shots fired. No distress call. Just nothing. Pull everyone out of the tunnels. Now. Sir, we can still. That's an order. Pull them out. The teams retreated, climbing back to the surface. When they emerged, Hayes did a head count. Patrol Team 10 was missing 3 soldiers. Team 9 had lost 1. Team 11 reported 2 men unaccounted for. 6 casualties. No bodies recovered. No confirmation of enemy contact. Hayes stared at the tunnel entrance. "What the hell is down there?" Captain Trent spoke quietly. "Not what. Who? And she's not running from us, sir. She's hunting." By 0800 hours, Hayes had lost operational control. Not officially, his rank and authority remained intact. But the invisible erosion of confidence was spreading through his ranks like poison. The soldiers were starting to flinch at shadows. Every collapsed building became a potential sniper nest. Every tunnel entrance a death trap. The factory, once a simple objective, had transformed into a cursed monument that swallowed men whole. "She's just one person," Hayes said, more to himself than anyone else. "One sniper. We have 300 soldiers." Trent did not respond. She was watching Patrol Team 4, which had been ordered to secure a supply depot 200 meters west. They were moving too slowly, too cautiously, weapons sweeping in panicked arcs. "They're breaking," she said. Hayes slammed his fist against the vehicle. "I won't accept that. We are trained professionals, not frightened recruits. Training doesn't account for an enemy who shouldn't exist." "She's not a ghost, Captain." "Then, explain where she is. Explain how she killed 6 men in an underground tunnel without firing a shot. Explain how she disappeared from a building we had surrounded." Hayes had no answers. He keyed his radio. "All teams, new orders. Abandon pursuit. Return to defensive positions. We hold the line and wait for reinforcements." It was the first time in his career he had ordered a retreat without enemy contact. Olivia watched them pull back. She was positioned on a rooftop 400 meters south, using a spotting scope to observe Hayes's command post. The withdrawal was orderly but defeated. Soldiers moved with their heads down, constantly checking their surroundings. Good. Fear was a weapon sharper than any bullet. She had not killed the 6 men in the tunnels. She had incapacitated them non-lethal strikes to pressure points, followed by flexi-cuffs and gags. They were alive, bound, and hidden in a sealed maintenance room 2 levels below ground. But Hayes did not know that. Let him imagine the worst. Let his men tell stories of the invisible killer who struck without warning. The truth did not matter. Only the perception. Olivia packed her rifle and descended from the rooftop. She had 4 hours until the main assault was scheduled to resume. 4 hours to do maximum psychological damage. She moved through the ruins like smoke, visible only when she wanted to be. Hayes received a new report at 0830. "Sir, Patrol Team 2 just spotted someone on the western ridge. Female, matching the sniper's description." He grabbed the radio. "Engage immediately." "Sir, she's just standing there, out in the open." Hayes pulled up the UAV feed. There, a lone figure on a ridge 700 meters west, too far for accurate rifle fire, perfectly positioned to be seen. "It's bait," Trent said. "I know it's bait. The question is what she's baiting us toward." He made a decision. Send Patrol Teams 1 and 6. Approach from opposite directions. Box her in. UAV provides overwatch. The teams mobilized. Olivia did not move from the ridge. She stood in plain sight, rifle slung across her back, watching them come. When they were 300 meters out, she raised one hand in a slow, deliberate wave. Then she stepped backward off the ridge. The teams rushed forward, expecting to find her injured at the base of the cliff. Instead, they found a rope secured to a boulder. She had rappelled down, then cut the rope loose. By the time they circled around to the base, she was already a quarter-mile away, moving through a ravine they had not thought to cover. Hayes watched it happen in real time through the UAV. "She's toying with us," he said flatly. Trent nodded. "And we keep taking the bait." At 0900 hours, Olivia made a mistake. She had been moving through the ruins of a residential district, planning her next repositioning, when Patrol Teams 3 and 7 converged from opposite directions. Pure chance. They had not been hunting her, just conducting a routine sweep. But now she was caught between them. 300 meters to the north. Team 7, 8 soldiers, moving south. 200 meters to the south. Team 3, 6 soldiers, moving north. The buildings on either side had collapsed into impassable rubble. No tunnels, no hidden exits. She was trapped. Olivia dropped into a crouch behind a low wall. Her mind raced through options. Fight. She could take out maybe 4 soldiers before they pinpointed her position. Then she would be overwhelmed. Run. Both teams would see her immediately. She would be cut down in open ground. Hide. There was nowhere to hide. The buildings were skeletal. No cover deep enough. She checked her watch. Team 7 would reach her position in 90 seconds. Team 3 in 60, 30 seconds to decide. She looked up. The remains of a water tower leaned precariously over the street, its supports half severed by previous shelling. A terrible idea formed. Olivia pulled a breaching charge from her pack, a small explosive meant for doors, not structures. She sprinted to the water tower's base and placed the charge against the weakest support beam. 20 seconds. She set the timer for 15 seconds and ran east, diving behind a concrete barrier just as Team 3 came into view. Contact, east side. Rifles swung toward her position. The charge detonated. The water tower groaned, a sound like a dying animal, and began to topple. 10,000 gallons of rust and metal crashed into the street, directly between the two teams. Dust exploded outward. Soldiers scattered. Radios erupted and shouted warnings. Olivia was already moving, using the chaos to slip through a gap that had not existed 10 seconds earlier. She scrambled over rubble, dropped into an alley, and ran. Behind her, Team 7's leader reported, "Explosion. Multiple casualties. Need medical." She had not killed anyone. The tower had fallen precisely where she calculated, blocking the teams but not crushing them. But they did not know that. Hayes's voice crackled over the radio. "Confirmed casualties? Negative. Tower missed us by meters, but target escaped in the confusion." A pause. Then, how? No one had an answer. At 1,100 hours, the main assault on the processing plant failed. Not because of resistance, the plant had been abandoned, but because Hayes's forces were no longer combat effective. 12 patrol teams, reduced to 9 functional units. Morale shattered. Soldiers jumping at sounds. 2 instances of friendly fire. Hayes received the order to withdraw at 1,130. Fall back to the eastern ridge. Air support will cover the retreat. He acknowledged the order and began the pullback. The battlefield emptied slowly. Armored vehicles rumbled east. Infantry followed in scattered groups, constantly checking their surroundings. Olivia watched from a distance. She could have taken more shots, could have harassed the retreat, but her objective had never been to kill, only to delay. And she had succeeded. The processing plant remained unclaimed. The northern corridor reinforcements had arrived. Hayes's advance was over. She slung her rifle and began the long walk back to her own lines. By 1,400 hours, the valley was quiet. Smoke still rose from burning vehicles. The factory stood silent, a monument to chaos. Hayes sat in his command vehicle, staring at casualty reports. 8 dead, 14 wounded, 6 still missing in the tunnels, all from one sniper. Trent entered, holding a tablet. "Sir, we found them." "Found who?" "The 6 from the tunnels, alive, bound and gagged in a maintenance room." Hayes looked up sharply. "She didn't kill them?" "No, sir. She left them alive deliberately. There's a note." She handed him the tablet. A photograph showed a piece of paper pinned to the wall above the bound soldiers. 3 words, written in precise block letters. "You were spared." Hayes read it twice. Then he set the tablet down and leaned back in his seat. "She could have killed them," he said quietly. "Could have killed dozens more. But she chose mercy. Or she chose terror," Trent replied. "Dead soldiers are statistics. Captured soldiers are stories. And stories spread." Hayes nodded slowly. "What's her name? Do we have any identification?" "No, sir. No photographs. No confirmed sightings beyond female average height. She wasn't wearing insignia. The only thing we know for certain is that she was here. And now? And now she's gone." 3 days later, Lieutenant Marcus Venn arrived in the valley with a recovery team. His orders were simple. Document the battlefield, retrieve equipment, and determine what had gone wrong with Hayes's assault. He walked through the factory ruins first. Scorch marks from gas grenades, bullet holes in walls. The decoy heat pack still sitting in the corner where Patrol Team 7 had found it. "Clever," Venn muttered. He descended into the drainage tunnels. Water had risen since the battle, flooding some passages. He found the maintenance room where the 6 soldiers had been held. The flexi-cuffs had been cut off, but one remained on the floor. Military grade, standard issue. "She used our own equipment against us," he noted in his report. He climbed back to the surface and stood in the center of the battlefield. 300 soldiers, 12 patrol teams, air support, thermal imaging, every advantage. And one sniper had made them all look like amateurs. Venn's radio crackled. "Sir, we found something." He followed the coordinates to the western ridge, where the sniper had stood in plain sight, waving. A soldier pointed to a flat rock. "Sir." Carved into the stone, shallow but deliberate. She vanished. Venn stared at the words. Not a threat, not a taunt, just a statement of fact. He took a photograph and added it to his report. When he returned to base, his commanding officer asked, "Do we know who she was?" "No, sir." "Do we know where she went?" "No, sir." "Then what do we know?" Venn hesitated. "Then, we know she was better than us." 6 months later, the story had spread through every military base in the region. Details varied. Some said she was 7 feet tall. Others claimed she could see in complete darkness. A few swore she had supernatural abilities. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. She was just exceptional at her job. Sergeant Devin Kramer heard the story in a bar 200 miles from Kazan Valley. A young private was telling it to anyone who would listen, and she vanished, man. Just gone. They had her surrounded, and she disappeared like smoke. Kramer had been part of Patrol Team 5. He had searched the factory 3 times. He knew the story was not exaggerated because he had lived it. "She's not a ghost," he said quietly. The private turned. "You were there?" "Yeah, I was there." "So what was she?" Kramer took a long drink. A reminder that all the technology, all the training, all the numbers, none of it matters if the other side is willing to think differently. But how did she escape? She didn't escape. That's the point. She was never trying to run. She was playing a different game than we were. The private frowned. "I don't understand." Neither did we. That's why she won. In the years that followed, instructors at military academies began using the Battle of Kazan Valley as a case study. Asymmetric warfare at its finest, they would say. One individual, properly positioned and psychologically astute, can defeat a force hundreds of times larger. They analyzed her tactics, the decoy heat signature, the tunnel system, the psychological manipulation, but they never found her. No name, no photograph, no confirmed identity. Some claimed she had died in a later battle. Others insisted she had retired. A few believed she was still out there, waiting. The truth remained classified at levels even most generals could not access. Captain Sarah Chen sat in a small office at a base whose location did not officially exist. On her desk was a file marked Kazan Valley Incident, Eyes Only. She opened it and read the final page. Operative, redacted. Mission status, success. Casualties inflicted, 0 confirmed kills. Casualties sustained, none. Objective, delay enemy advance for minimum 6 hours. Actual delay, 14 hours. Commendation, recommended. Current status, active duty, location classified. Chen closed the file and locked it in her safe. The woman in question sat 3 floors below, cleaning her rifle and preparing for her next assignment. She did not think about Kazan Valley often. It had been a job. She had done it well. But sometimes, late at night, she remembered standing on that ridge. The moment she had waved at the approaching patrol teams before stepping backward into thin air. The look on their faces. She smiled. Lieutenant Colonel Warren Hayes retired 8 months after the battle. He never spoke publicly about what happened in the valley. When pressed, he would only say, "I learned that winning requires more than superior force." In private, he kept a single reminder, a photograph of the carved stone. She vanished. He framed it and hung it in his study. Beneath it, he added a handwritten note. If she vanished, you survived by luck. It was the last lesson she had taught him, and he never forgot it. The Kazan Valley fell silent after that day. The factory still stands, slowly reclaimed by weather and time. The tunnels remain, flooded and forgotten. But soldiers who pass through the area still speak in hushed tones. They say if you listen carefully on quiet nights, you can hear the echo of a single rifle shot. They say the ghost of the valley still watches. They say she never left. But those who know the truth understand. She was never a ghost. She was just better than them. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. 2 years after Kazan Valley, a young sniper named Corporal Emily Dawson sat in a briefing room. Her instructor, a grizzled veteran named Master Sergeant Paul Hendricks, stood at the front. "Today we discuss patience," he said. "And I'm going to tell you a story." He pulled up a satellite image of Kazan Valley. 2 years ago, one woman held off 300 soldiers for 14 hours. She killed no one. She escaped undetected. And she left behind a legend that still terrifies trained professionals. Dawson raised her hand. "Sir, is the story true?" Hendricks smiled. "Every word. I know because I was one of those 300 soldiers." The room fell silent. "She taught us that combat is not about killing, it is about objectives. She taught us that fear is a weapon. She taught us that being seen is a choice." He gestured to the image. "Somewhere out there, she is still operating, still vanishing when it suits her, still reminding us that the most dangerous enemy is not the strongest, it is the smartest." Dawson studied the image. "Do you think we will ever find out who she was?" "No," Hendricks said, "and that is exactly how she wants it." He turned off the projector. "Class dismissed. Remember this. If you face an enemy like her, your only advantage is luck, and luck runs out." The students filed out. Hendricks remained, staring at the dark screen. He whispered to the empty room, "Whoever you are, thank you for the lesson." The room offered no reply. But somewhere, in a location that did not officially exist, a woman cleaning her rifle paused. She felt the acknowledgement across the distance, though she could not explain how. She nodded once. Then, she returned to her work. The legend of the vanished sniper lived on, and she continued to disappear, again and again, whenever her country needed her to. Because that was what she did. That was what she had always done. She vanished. and the world was safer for it.